that a lot of those early and even ancient accounts of sea monsters, many by ancient mariners, many of them may well have been true.
Well, certainly large fish did attack ships in Roman times and maybe before that, because some of the early writers wrote about being rammed by swordfishes, and we know even from looking at the planks of more recent ships especially the 16th, 17th, 18th centuries, when lots and lots of these big timber sailing ships were sailing around the world exploring and trading. When they were careened, in other words, when they were pulled up onto dry land to scrape the bottom, quite often there was these swords and spears of marlins and swordfish found embedded in the timbers, and they embedded very deep, sometimes maybe a metre into the timbers.
It would completely pierce the timber?
Yeah.
All the way through?
Yeah, because the point is that these fish, when they get their speed up, can move at incredible speeds actually underwater. And this is, we're talking about the streamlining. It works to the extent that some of these billfishes, as we call them, because they've got this bill on the end of their nose, have been clocked at up to 60 miles per hour, 100 kilometres per hour in a burst. And that's enough with this tiny point behind this huge muscular body, which would drive the bill through the ships.
Well, let me ask the obvious question now. Why would a fish go at a boat at the equivalent of like 100 k's nose first? Why would it want to attack a boat at what would have to be insanely suicidal speed, I would thought?
Well, of course, the early mariners thought that these fish were attacking the boat to try and sink it. They got annoyed with it for some reason, and that was a reasonable assumption to make. Now we know, really, that any large floating object out on the ocean attracts lots of small fishes around it. It's a interesting phenomenon that just happens with oceanic fishes, that they, as I mentioned, it's a featureless void out there. So if there's a floating object, lots of fish come around it because maybe they're curious, or also it gives them some protection against predators. They can sort of hide behind a floating object. So if you've got a floating ship, pretty big object, it would almost certainly have, especially if it's moving fairly slowly, a great entourage of smaller fish following it and using it for shelter. And therefore the predators know this too, and they get attracted to these floating objects. And usually a natural floating object would be logs that have been washed out in floods, and that's a very common habitat. Out on the open ocean, you find a floating log, and it'll have a whole ecology of animals living sort of around it.
So the swordfish are after these smaller fish,
exactly.
Are they? So are you talking about a car crash then? This is all it is?
Exactly. The swordfish is not expecting to hit anything. It's never hit anything in its life before, because there's no walls, as I said. So it's coming up and it sees a prey fish. It's going for it, and bang,
bang, bang.
Yeah, and
like an arrow and a target.
That's
in other
right.
words. Then the sword, I suppose, or the bill, as you call it, would snap off.
Yes, usually, yes.
Would that then result in the death of the fish?
No, the billfish will survive. I mean, it may well result in the death of some, but we know that many do survive, because I personally have seen many marlin that have been subsequently caught that have had a bill broken off at a previous time. And
do they grow back?
When they're very little, they do. When they're still juvenile and still growing, let's say a 1 metre long marlin, its bill will definitely grow back. But no, not when they get older, they don't. So they look like kind of a pug-nosed fish when this bill's broken off. But it appears that they can still operate okay, probably not as efficiently and probably not swim as fast, because one of the functions of the bill is actually to break the water in front of the object, like a missile, Polaris missile has a point. It breaks through the water.
So that's what it's there for. It's there to increase speed.
It's almost certainly what it's evolved for this whole streamlining effect. You can even look at some more primitive open ocean fishes that have a pointy head, but they haven't developed the bill yet. But marlin and swordfish have actually developed another use of their bill, and that is to stun prey fish. So Swordfish, for example, will move into a school of squid. They eat squid a lot. Swordfish are a deeper water sort of open ocean fish. And they'll slash from side to side with this absolute bill that looks exactly like a broadsword, and just slash through and then come back and take the morsels that it's chopped up.
Well, it can actually, just by swishing its head from side to side, chop up the fish in front of it.
Absolutely, yeah. And marlin have
So it's got a sharp blade on it then.
A sharp blade on the side. It's a flat
It's not just
sword.
a point. It's not just a point. It's a blade.
That's right. In the swordfish, yeah. And the swordfish is a very successful species of open ocean fish. It occurs all over the world, right up into colder climes in the northern and southern hemisphere. So its body form is obviously incredibly efficient. The marlins, on the other hand, are a whole group. The sailfishers, marlins, and spearfishers. There's a different family of billfish, not that closely related to swordfish, but again look very similar. They have a round bill, like a spear. They used to be all called spearfishers, and it's covered with little teeth, like little sharp denticles, and they use it in the same way to attack a tuna. Tuna is one of the favourite food of the larger blue and black marlin, and they'll follow at very fast speeds smaller tunas and hit them from the side, and the teeth will cause a nasty wound and stun the prey, and then they'll grab it and swallow it first. By the way, neither of those two species have teeth, so that they're relying on swallowing the prey whole.
So, okay. So they don't have teeth for all that the ferocity of their bill. They don't have teeth to chew with.
No, they don't. I mean, they are
gulp it down.
No, exactly. They are genuine apex predators, meaning they're at the apex of the food pyramid, if you like, of the ocean. They are one of the species, or one of the groups of species, that is right up there, because they grow very large. They're eating slightly smaller tunas, and the tunas are eating smaller and smaller fish, and so on. But they don't have teeth. So they rely on either just grabbing the prey and squashing it with their mouth and then swallowing it, or hitting it with their bill. Whereas, of course, the other apex predators out there are the sharks, and they certainly have teeth.
A marine biologist and author, Dr. Julie